of the main concerns of the Democrat Party is the fear of dissolution of the party once the cases against them, election fraud and violation of election law, comes up in the Constitutional Court. What is the latest take on that?
The latest we know is the anxiety is growing within the party, and it is opposite of what we heard before. They used to be afraid of the bigger case, the so-called bigger case of the 258 million donation case. But now it seems that the Democrats are very worried about this minor 29 million baht misuse of election fund, fund from the Election Commission. And we also heard from some sources from in the Election Commission that this is a they have a very strong case in this, and it will be up to the court to decide how far they would go to punish the party. Because the 5 election commissioners, they are all in consensus that the Democrat Party is guilty on this one.
So what is the plan B or the contingency plan of the Democrat Party if that should happen, if the bad news really come true?
We have talked about a few scenarios now. Obviously, the name of Kun Suthichai has come up again
as the possible prime minister
candidate. So it will be up to the court how far the court would do in punishing the executive.
What if the worst case scenario is that the court says that the Democrat Party has to be dissolved and that all the executive members are banned from politics for 5 years, including Apisit?
Yes. In that case, Kun Chuan, who is not in the executive board of the party, will become a contender for the premiership.
Very interesting that from what we have learned, 3 senior members of the Democrat Party are not on the list of people who are to be banned. They were not executive members when these alleged violations took place. That is Kun Suthichai, Suthichai, Secretary General of the party, and Kon, the finance minister. So these 3 senior members of the Democrat will remain. That means that if they pick a new party, these 3 people will lead the new Democrat Party, whatever they call it.
They'll be in contention for the leadership of the new party. But as we all know that if we talk about Kun Suthichai or Kun Kon, they were so too close to Kun Apisit, and they were too close to what happened, too close to the crisis for the past 2 months. So Kun Chuan is the only one who still not so close to the crisis, to the political crisis, and he could be perceived as the reconciliatory figure, and he could be the only one acceptable by the Red Shirt and the Pheu Thai Party.
So that is the worst case scenario.
Worst case scenario.
The possibility of Suthichai becoming prime minister again cannot be ruled out.
Cannot be ruled out.
What are the chances of a national government then in that case? Meaning that the Democrat Party will be dissolved and a new party will emerge with Kun Chuan heading it, and the possibility of Kun Chuan inviting the opposition parties to join in forming a national government is also possible then?
Yeah, that's possible on paper, but knowing the Democrat Party, that would be the very last thing that they would do. They would try everything they could, everything they can to form an unchanged government.
And that means Kun Apisit will be out of politics for 5 years.
For 5 years, and he will have to finish his doctorate first, and he can start teaching maybe in England.
Wow, really?
Yes.
That will be a very interesting scenario, meaning that Kun Apisit will take a 5-year leave of absence, will be lecturing maybe.
Maybe, yes.
And doing his PhD. And by then he will be about 50-something? 51, 52, still young enough
still very young
to make another comeback to politics. Well, maybe this dissolution or proposed the dissolution of the Democrat Party isn't so bad for Kun Apisit after all.
And not so bad for, for the Thai politics as well. From what we talked to many people, a lot of people believe that to dissolve Democrat Party and punish certain senior Democrat will go a long way to clearing out the reputation of Thailand for being biased against the racial.
Putting an end to the double standard allegation.
So if the only reasons, the main argument of the racial is that whatever the Democrat did is never get punished. The party never got punished. But now, if the party got punished, it would somehow preempt any future movement or any future activities of the racials.
Well, Thai Rak Thai has been dissolved. Palang Prachachon was subsequently dissolved. Now, if the Democrat Party are also dissolved, then we're going to have a clean slate of Thai politics. Maybe that's not necessarily a bad thing, but then we have to see whether that worst case scenario will actually come to pass.